So today I'm going to talk about the future of coding, specifically. And there's a few things I want to touch on just a second before. Oh, what? Oh, okay. My name is Alex Volkov, as Dima said. I'm a solutions architect, marketing solutions architect here at Fundbox. I'm also the first frontend. I've been with the company for an ungodly amount of years, 8 plus. This is my Twitter. Wait, hold on. I need to fix this. There we go. There we go. I need to fix this. Oh, there's my Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. And, HR folks are really, really invested in this meetup. So it's really important for me to say we're hiring. All right. So please, folks, go check out Fundbox Careers. We have a bunch of places. But also do follow me on Twitter because I do share some of these things that I'm going to share today on there as well. So I want to kind of discuss what we mean by coding or developing, right? So to me, generally, the coding is problem solving. We all map what we think is a problem onto a different language, which is a computer language, and that's what we mean by coding. And I would like to kind of to suggest to you that there's two major steps in doing this, right? The first step is understanding the problem. That's a very complex step because you listen to your users, you listen to your product managers, you understand kind of the general big problem that you want to solve. And another step is breaking that. So after you break down this big problem into little problems, the other step is mapping those little problems into pieces of code or pieces of API that do the code for you, or some specific React features or connecting to databases, right? So like we all are in the business of problem solving. That's important for me to kind of convey to you. We solve problems by telling machines what to do, and we tell them by translating from our head or from our users' requirements into mapping to big problems, breaking down the big problems, and then the last piece is kind of mapping the little problems that we've identified. You can call them functions, you can call them class method, it doesn't matter, onto code, and that code executes something. And so I will touch, this is going to be the general discussion in this talk. Will AI replace all of us coders? So there's advancements in the world of AI, which I'm going to cover, and I want to address it for the top. I don't think so. Specifically because of those two things that I just mentioned, the big problem breaking down into little problems, and mapping those problems into code. But honestly, nobody really knows. Okay, so as we kind of embark on more and more into the world of AI, right? There's autonomous cars being tested as we speak. There are every phone comes with at least like 5 cores specific for neural net training and AI. We're all Fundbox is in the business of machine learning as well to figure out how small businesses if they're risky or not. And no one really knows what the future holds because as humans, we don't have an intuition for exponential growth. So if you can imagine that, AI didn't exist like 10 years ago, generally, right? Don't hold me to the exact date. And now we're in this world with like literally every one of us has an AI chip in their pocket and, potentially on their hand and in their ears and soon maybe in a lens. We don't have a gut feeling and intuition for exponential growth. And I can tell you that based on Moore's law, which computers are getting faster and cheaper every 10 to 16 months, there's an additional thing called Metcalfe's law, and those can be mapped onto progress, and that progress is exponential. And we can't understand what's going to happen in 16 months or even 3 years. And also the future is unpredictable because even though that exponential rate of growth is happening, some things change the future completely. So for instance, we don't know when quantum computing is going to happen, but potentially it's going to happen. When quantum computing happens and AI gets mapped to quantum computing, I have no idea if that's going to replace coders or not, but not anytime soon. Okay, so that's also important to convey, right? So everybody has a different understanding of soon. Some of us are only starting our careers, and soon for us is a couple of years. Some of us are like have been here for a while, and soon for us is end of our career. But my question is, will our children need to learn to code? Or would they be like, in 2030, hey, whatever, Alexa or Siri, generate a React-based, single-page application, server-side in Rust, deployed to AWS with zone replication, auto-scale group? I don't think so. This is an example of Thank you. This is an example of the big problem, right? So this lacks a bunch of context. You have to talk to your users. What are the features of that single page application? Do you want it, mobile responsive as well? There's so many questions that on the way of solving this, you're going to have to ask, iterate, and discuss with the full team that's going to build this. Then that this on its own is just not enough. So I don't think that this is going to happen soon at all. But I do want to explore what is possible soon. And by this soon, I mean pretty much now. And I would want to kind of posit that we will not be replaced by AI, but we'll definitely shake hands with it. So we will definitely all use AI assistant tools. Driving as well, but I'm not going to talk about driving today. But we'll all use AI assistant tools very, very soon. I want to show you the very cool new excitements that are happening in this area. And I will start with this. There's a company called OpenAI. It was co-founded with Sam Altman from Y Combinator and Elon Musk and a bunch of other folks. They all together pledged $1 billion to develop AI responsibly and in the open, thus OpenAI. And the whole purpose is they're going to share their progress publicly. They're going to share their, patents publicly. They're going to share their models essentially and give open access to those models. Somewhere in, I think 2019, Microsoft also heavily invested, also around $1 billion, and has exclusive licensing rights. Microsoft, as you folks know, owns GitHub. And that company, OpenAI, did a bunch of things. You can read about Style Gun, you can read about Image Gun, you can read about a bunch of things. They opened AI Gym to train models. The biggest thing folks know them for so far is GPT-3. I don't know if you heard about GPT-3. GPT-3 is amazingly exciting. It's a neural net that was trained on an ungodly amount of parameters, if you understand machine learning a little bit, 175 billion parameters across the web. Essentially, they trained the machine to read code, understand code, and give you, read text, understand text, and understand your input as text. And I bet that some of you have read articles on the web that GPT-3 wrote for that user, and you haven't even noticed. It's really hard to notice the difference between article that's written with GPT and article that's written by humans. Somewhere in 2021, or they trained it before, they trained a sub-model of GPT-3 called Codex. And in addition, for that model understanding language, simple language as we humans speak it, Codex was trained on code. How much code, you ask? Well, most of GitHub. And in collaboration with GitHub, because Microsoft invested in OpenAI, they did this together. GPT-3 Codex submodel was trained on all of the public code on GitHub. If you have public code, likely your code was helped train this. And GitHub released this new awesome tool. And if you haven't heard of it, I will introduce you to Copilot. This is a screen grab from the blog. I just want to call out that one of the participants in this meetup, Idan Gazit, his team was in charge of this amazing website. And I'm gonna steal some examples from your website today. GitHub released Copilot. Copilot is an extension to VS Code, Visual Studio Code, right? That's also owned by GitHub. That uses that AI to autocomplete for you. It's context aware. It's aware of the position of your cursor. I'm going to show you some examples. And this is essentially how it works, right? So you have, the Codex on the left, which is kind of an API. This was trained on public code and text on the internet. You have the Copilot service, and then your VS Code is connected there. And every time you type something, it will autocomplete for you whatever it thinks that you want to do. So here's an example, right? This is shamelessly copied just from the website. You ask Codex, you give it a little comment, you say, find images with an alt attribute and give them a red border, and Codex will go and generate the code for you that does just that. Sometimes it does an amazing generation, sometimes it does less than amazing generation, but definitely helpful. Here's another example. Codex, Copilot is really, really great for repetitive tasks, right? And you all know them. We've all done them. Front-end developers do this at least once, I don't know, a month, definitely a couple of times a year. You calculate that seconds equals 1,000 milliseconds, and then you do minutes is times 60, and then boom, Copilot auto-completed because he knows where you're going with this. So just auto-completed for you the rest of the calculations, so you don't have to do this. Greatly helpful. Now let's switch back to my examples a little bit. What I found from using Copilot, which is in private beta, but you can apply to get access, and folks can, you'll get access fairly soon, is it's great for logging, something we do all the time. And here's an example, super simple function. There's no reason for this function as a function, but just for to highlight this use case, there's a function called full name, takes the first and last name, returns the full name, right? And I want to check if it works. So I do, like all of us, I do a console log, but instead of me doing the console log, I'm going to ask Copilot to do console log. So here's an example. You can see that I wrote a comment, right? And then you can see on the bottom right here that a Copilot will load a little bit and show me Bruce Wayne. Now check this out. This is crazy. So I said the same thing. I just said log with Spider-Man's name. Codex knows that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. It unveiled the secret identity of that Superman. Also for Superman, it knows that it's Clark Kent. So you can see that, like, besides just knowing kind of what I want and contextually knowing what I need, it also uses the function that it just wrote. And so when I say log, because there's only one function, contextually, Copilot knows what it is that I want. And that's very important because Copilot looks at your whole file and tries to understand your style of writing and suggests to you code in that style, understands the language you're writing in, understands a bunch of things, but also can do cool things like, log with the Simpsons name, Homer Simpson, log another Simpsons name. It won't bring you Homer again, it will bring you Marge, even though we do have Marge twice. So that it's great for logging, just really great for logging. Another thing that Copilot is really, really good at, and here, when I started kind of feeling this on my own coding time after I got access, I noticed that I go less to Stack Overflow, something that we by default do, right? So we just go to Stack Overflow and check stuff. Copilot can bring you what you need from there. And here's an example. This is Python. Just one thing to note that Copilot, Codex as an engine, and by extension Copilot, they're best at Python and JavaScript, the best two languages. By the way, we use them at Fundbox. If you're proficient, come join us. But also other languages as well. And here's an example of a Python function that uses NumPy. NumPy is this package that I haven't used. I know that data scientists use it. I haven't used it. And I asked Copilot to create a function that calculates the mean and standard deviation of a list of numbers, fairly standard kind of mathematical things, and NumPy does them for us. I did not remember or know that np.std is the standard deviation. Copilot auto-completed this, and I saved myself a trip to Stack Overflow to go and check this out. And here's another example of logging only in Python, right? And you can see that it auto-completes the values here from 1 to like 20, and it can do a bunch of continuous auto-completions for values for you, and that's really great as well. So again, NumPy package that I haven't used before, and I can work with it because Copilot helps it. So I'm gonna try to do live example of Copilot, and I pray to the gods of live demos that this is gonna work. And please, Dima, I would like your assistance to tell me if you can see my VS Code. Yeah, cool. So, all right. So we have one example, and you can see the Copilot auto-completes. You will see it in this gray function that, and you can see that it says prompt the user for a number. So Copilot not only auto-completes code for you, it also auto-completes the comment that you write for it to auto-complete for you, right? So it also suggests for you what you may want from it, which is great, because sometimes, for example, I will just hit tab and I would expect it to do the thing that he did. Let me just show you what exactly Copilot invented. Function that prompts the user for a number, logs a message that describes whether the number is even or odd. So I'll start with function. I'll wait for Copilot to auto-suggest this. I'll hit tab, and then new line. I'll hit tab again after it returns something. In this case, that's not very what I wanted to show you, but let's do a simple function that checks what number is the largest from an array of numbers. Function. You'll autocomplete the name of the function and we'll receive an array, right? And then I hit tab and I hit enter. It will just generate the code. Largest is 0. It's going to do iteration, blah, 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 blah. And then let me ask log the result. Console log largest number. Let's see if this works. This may fail. This failed. Let's see. Yeah, it does not work. But I have prepared other examples as well. But one important thing to know is it's an iterative process, right? So not all the time you'll get exactly what you want. And somebody smarter than me said, computers don't give you what you want, they give you what you ask of them. And in Copilot's case, that's a little bit different. But let's see some other examples of what Copilot can do, right? So here's Python. And if you're not familiar with Python, Copilot can help you there as well. Create a class called user with first name, last name, and email attributes. So let's do class user, and then Copilot will autocomplete this class for me. See, def init, first name, last name, email. It also added some helpful methods here. Describe the user and greet the user. And another example of a language that I completely don't know or haven't written in a long time, and I think I stole this from like lead coders or something. Given two sorted arrays, so we need to sort those arrays. I have no idea how to sort in Ruby, of size m and n respectively. Return the median of the two sorted arrays. All I need to know is how to like ask Copilot to start, which is by writing like the function definition, in this case def in Ruby. Boom. So Copilot suggested to me, find median sorted arrays, nums1 and nums2. It does the dot sort and then it divides them, or it does mod 2. Let's test this. So log the result. Right, so it knows that in Ruby, logging is puts. Why is it puts? I have no idea. And let me try one again, and then let's run this code. Let's see if this code is going to work. Hey, there we go. So the median between two sorted arrays is 2 in this case, and then 2.5 in this case. And then let's try it one more. Let's try this one. I did not run. There we go. So the median here is 3. So those are live examples of Copilot. Let me go back now to my slides. Can you see my slides now? Yes, awesome. So let me go like that. Will the goal is give you what you want? No, that's very important to understand and not dismiss kind of the not throw out the baby with the bathwater, as they say. Not to dismiss the whole thing because you got in some bad examples. Because even when I write code for the first time, likely that code is not 100% correct. That's happening to all of us. And I found that I've had to fish for examples for you, recorded examples, and some of the examples I'll show you are recorded, and they not often they worked. And for example, the first example I showed you didn't like immediately work. I found it an iterative process where you refine what you want from, and you ask Copilot exactly what you want, or like to clarify. That iterative process is really helpful. And wording your request differently sometimes helps. Sometimes a comma in the right place or a different word, Copilot will understand you better. An additional thing is, given tasks should be very small. The smaller, the easier it is for Copilot to suggest you the right thing that you want. So there's an additional feature here where you saw me just autocomplete, right? So I used kind of the new way to autocomplete with AI. I just hit tab and it autocompleted for me some stuff. Here's an example of how you can generate fuller solutions, right? So you can hit Control Enter or Command Enter on the Mac, and on the right you see Copilot. There's a full pane. Let me try again. Yes, I'll do another function, and I hit Control Enter or Command Enter, and then you see on the right. Let me pause this real quick. It's going too fast. So you see on the right, there's a few solutions. Copilot generated, I think, 2 solutions in this case. It can generate up to 10. And this is really great for when you have no idea what you're about to write. you just like name a function and you want to see kind of how you could approach this. And sometimes you will, you know, in this case it shows you like ES6 syntax with fat arrow functions. Before that it will show you something else. This is an example of, let me go back a little bit. So my first examples where we generated 3 solutions for me, you see that only the last example is ES6 syntax. The first example is using like ES5 syntax. And so you can accept a full solution here without having to do tab, tab, tab for every line, which is sometimes great because sometimes you want to overview the full solution. And so this is how you generate a full solution from Copilot. Now, I've talked a lot about Copilot. Copilot is exciting on its own. I can do it justice by just 45 minutes just speaking about Copilot on its own. I want to stress the very important point. If you're looking at this as like, this is a gimmick, Copilot is... Ooh, somebody is annotating on my screen. Please do not. Thank you. Copilot is just using an API called Codex. Not just, obviously, there's a huge amount of work went into this A/B testing. You know, folks in GitHub ran with it for like 6 months, even more. But I want to stress that Codex is an API that Copilot uses. And Codex can be utilized for so many other things, like playgrounds and other IDE extensions, for instance. I had to switch from PyCharm or WebStorm that we use in Fundbox into VS Code, and it took me a second just because of Copilot. But definitely, whoever's drawing on my screen, please stop. But definitely there's like a full world of applications that could be developed and already are being developed in tools, and I will show you some tools. So folks might ask after this talk, like, how can I play with this, right? I don't have access to beta to Copilot, and maybe you have friends in GitHub who can help you get in the list first. I don't have access to Codex beta, and I will tell you how to get in there. There's an extension and a website called Figstack that's free. It actually opened up free yesterday, which was very helpful for my talk today. That you can, it also uses the Codex API, and you can test it out right now. It's not as good as Copilot, but it does some cool things. I want to show you. It's a VS Code extension and a GitHub extension. And the way it does VS Code extensions is like this. You install it, you authenticate, and then you can select. And then you see there's like 4 things it adds for you inside VS Code. Explain code, get time complexity, write a doc string, and ask a question. And I'll show you some examples. And so in this case, I asked to estimate the time complexity of this function. For those of you who did computer science in university, you know what the big O stands for, right? Like the complexity of a function. I'm self-taught. I have no idea what the big O notation means, but in this case, it's ON of that function. Another thing you can do is to ask it to write a doc string for you, right? Something that we don't often do, and it's annoying for us as developers. But look, all I did is I selected the function, and I right-clicked and I did something, and then an AI auto-completed the doc string for me. Now, I want to stress something very important. Our IDEs are very smart at this point. So PyCharm can probably do this by just looking at the signature and the name. But in this case, it's a little bit different because the list of numbers you want to find the largest number in, that's something that Copilot kind of got us. And the doc string is a little better than just a basic doc string based on inputs and outputs. A very exciting use case, and here again, this is my class, my Python class. A very exciting use case of this is asking a question. And I want to show you how this works, right? So there's a Figstack, the extension, that's free, that you can install right now today. Don't go right now. Please wait until I finish and then go install it after, I finish and the lab finishes and then go install it. But you can ask questions of Copilot. So you can essentially provide the prompt that you want. In this case, I wrote, what does this code do? And you see the result is right here. The code is creating a class called user with first name, last name, and email attributes. Think back to when you start. So I know we maybe have some new folks here that only starting developing. This is for you definitely. But for folks who've been like coding for a while, think back to when you just started and you didn't have anybody to ask around you, and you had to like figure out what should I kind of Google for my code specifically. I just want to stress this point for a second. You ask an AI what your code does, and AI understands your code and gives you an answer about the code that you just selected in simple language. This is really hard to do without people around you. This is really hard to do without, asking somebody on Slack. So when you're like learning a new language, like I did at like midnight or 2 a.m., and there's nobody around because everybody is asleep, Copilot's got your back. Right? In this case, Codex has got your back. I'm going to confuse the two, but in this case, this is Codex via the Fig Stack extension. Here's another question that I asked. Will this code run? Sometimes it will detect errors for you, and that's pretty cool as well. And you can ask it different questions like, hey, are you sentient? What's your name? Do you have parents? And you'll go down the rabbit hole of like talking with an AI. This is not built for the chat, but this will work as a chat as well. I literally added this slide today because for some reason I told you, so let me go back a little bit. One of the things that I just put here as usages, command line tools. I decided today to Google while I was waiting for this Zoom to start, and I found this one, ZSH Codex, essentially an extension for command line tools that does the same. You write what you want, and it will autocomplete the command line function for you. And I will do a live demo of this, but it will likely not work because I only installed it just literally today. Right. So this is the cool part. As some of you who know me have seen my talks before, and some friends who work with me know how much I love Alfred for Mac, right? Alfred is a launcher. It does a bunch of other things. It's a very, very useful tool for productivity. And I immediately had an idea. As soon as I got access to Codex beta, I decided to do something with it. And so what I did is something. Before that, I'll explain what Alfred can do for you. Alfred has this feature called universal feature, universal access, something like this. You can select text. It doesn't matter where, in your IDE, in your browser, whatever, whenever you can select text in Excel, it doesn't matter. And you can hit a shortcut and do actions on that text. Jesus. 1 second, please. Somebody's annotating, and I will delete this, and that's it. I disabled annotations for other folks. So I immediately started to say, hey, how can I use Alfred for the purposes to test out OpenAI Codex tools? And here's an example. Here's an example that I use with the tool that I built that connects to that API that explains code. So in this case, this is a gist from GitHub, just so you see that it's not like a command. So it's not an IDE extension. It's just something that exists universally. So I can select this text in gist. I hit a shortcut to pull up Alfred, and then I write explain this piece of code. Let me pause here for a sec and roll back. So I wrote an extension. I found the function that I want from Alfred. And you can see on the right, it knows what I selected, right? So function sum, total 0, and it runs a for loop and then returns the total. And so I say explain this code, and I send it to Copilot, so to Codex, and Codex returns this, and also pastes this in my clipboard. Script does the following: create a function called sum, create a variable called total and set it to 0, create a for loop, and add the value of the array to each index, blah, 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 blah. How cool is this? I have now an immediate interpreter no matter where I'm looking at code, which is, I found it, since I built it, I've been using this a lot. Now, here's another example, and just so you understand how easy this is also very important for me to stress. This is the whole code. Alfred takes care of everything else, right? The selection and blah, 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 blah. Essentially, it boils down to this explain.py function. That's most of that function. What it does is lines 8 to 11, you can see here, is the prompt. Don't get it confuse you. There's like strings interpolation here. It doesn't really matter, right? What matters here is you see the query on line 9. That's the code that I selected, enters here. And then below it, I write some text for Codex, what's called the prompt. I ask it what to do. And I say, summary of the above code in 3 lines in simple terms. Sometimes it gives you more lines. And then on the next line, I just start with 1 dot. So I'll ask it to format it in the bullet list, right? And then I pass this query into this function called OpenAI.completionCreate. It knows my credentials, right? It doesn't work for everybody. You have to apply for credentials. It knows them. I use the DaVinci Codex engine, and I use the prompt that I just created. And here I'm going to do something kind of crazy. I'm going to select the code that asks Codex to translate things, and I will ask Codex to translate the code that asks Codex to translate things. And hopefully it won't crash for an infinite loop. But essentially, folks, here's Codex explaining the code that used to run Codex to explain I can go forever. But essentially, look, it knows create a response object calling the completion.creation method, which I haven't used before this. Specify the engine, in this case, DaVinci Codex. Specify the prompt, prompt being what I asked Codex to complete. In this case, the prompt is the prompt variable. Amazing. This is crazy. This is like really crazy. So you might ask yourselves, well, Alex, what's the deal? Like, why are you so excited by translating your own code? What's the use case here? And I want to present to you this website called Rosetta Code. If you haven't seen this before, it's a very cool place to go. Rosetta Code has a bunch of coding examples in almost all existing coding languages, right? So if you're familiar with Rosetta Stone as a thing, Rosetta Code is like a play on that, and it has over 100 languages for the same task, right? So you can see. And in this example, you can go to Rosetta Code and select a language you haven't seen before, and then explain it as well. And I'm not sure the Codex was trained on Kotlin. Kotlin is a subset of Java, I think. But look, I don't know how, I don't know what this language looks like. I don't know its syntax, but fairly easily at my fingertips, I have a way of translating this into simple language to understand. Now, this translation happens because I tell Codex what you just saw before. I tell Codex, hey, summary of the above code in 3 lines in simple terms. But we can take this a step further. We can ask Codex to detect what language is it that I'm going to translate. So here's another example. Also, pretty much something I've built on top of this API. And as a POC, right? It's not useful. I can't share it with you yet, but like generally as a POC, I select code in a language called VBA. And in this case, I write translate. So let me just pause here for a sec. So I write translate this piece of code. And when I say translate this piece of code, I do 2 things. First, I ask Codex to identify the language. In this case, you see it understood that it's VBScript. So I selected something. VBA and VBScript are fairly similar, so I'm not sure if Codex could know the difference, but definitely it understood what I wrote, right? So I went to this Rosetta Code, tried it on a bunch of different languages. Some of them it understood easily. And then I asked it to translate to Python. And here you see the same code as here, translated to Python. Here's another example for our JavaScript developers. This is a Fundbox Frontend meetup after all. Here's the same example translated to JavaScript. Let me try just this little function because it's going to be a little easier to see. You can see that it detected the language and it will just give us JavaScript. Ta-da! I just translated code together with AI in a few simple keystrokes. So there's an example of something that I did. Now, those are recorded things. How am I doing on time? I have 10 minutes left, so I will quickly do a live demo of this. So you guys tell me when you see Visual Studio. Yeah? Visual Studio, yes. Somebody nod? Awesome. So here's Visual Studio, and here's the results that we did before. So let me show you how a fixed stack works, right? So you right click, you have all these options for fixed stack, and then you can do explain code as well. Fixed stack will just add the explanation on top. So you see, we first concatenate nums into nums, then we sort nums. If the length of num is odd, then median, blah, blah, blah. So it explains the code. And this is in Ruby. So let me delete this and show you a docstring. So here's fixed stack using AI with Codex to generate the docstring. Find the median of 2 sorted arrays, args, and returns the median of 2 sorted arrays. Same works with Python, right? So here's our class. Let us select our class and do write docstring. And you can see that it takes a little bit a while, but here we go. We have class user. It shoves the full class into docstring for some reason. I don't know why. And then args, self, first name, last name, email. The string representing the user's email address, and the string that holds the user's last name. The first name of the user. I find it funny that this is the first name of the user, and this is that holds the user's last name. I'm going to show you an example of a question, right? So let's do ask a question. You see a prompt here. You say, what does this method do? The method prints a description of the user. Ta-da! Now this is fairly simple, right? Like we could understand this, but it's still really cool. You can just ask questions. We can ask questions of what is the complexity of this method? And then you'll get an answer saying, oh, of 1. I don't know why. I don't know if that's true because I don't know computer science. Let's do JavaScript as well. And let's look at this one and say, explain code in JavaScript. Just to show you that it also works in JavaScript, here's the explanation. We start by initializing variable letters to 0. We'll loop through the array, compare each element. If the element is larger, we set the largest to that element. Once we've gone through array, largest will contain the largest element. That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. And now I want to show you examples of Alfred, but I don't think it's going to work with the way Zoom shares my only windows and not a screen. So I will skip that example, and also running a little bit low on time. But that's not all, folks. But wait, there's more. If you know who Billy Mays is, this will be funny for you. If you don't know who this dude is, skip this meme. Everything that I just showed you, I'm going to stay in this little thing. Everything that I just showed you doesn't affect the real world, right? So GPT-3 generates some text for you, and Copilot helps you to write some functions. That's pretty cool. And all of the stuff that I did, they're helpful, but they essentially, until you run them, nothing happens. So you're in charge of figuring out how to use what it gave you. But there's so much more into this. So to really illustrate the power of Codex, OpenAI built a JavaScript Playground, which turns, first of all, your prompt into JavaScript, but then it also executes those functions in the sandbox, and it's just immensely fun to play with. And if you haven't paid attention till now, pay attention. I just write something like, add the red circle with 20 pixel, 20 pixel radius. And you can see on the right that not only generated the JavaScript code for me to do this, it also executed the code on the left in the playground. And now I have a red circle with 20 pixel radius, and it's a background color red. Now, Elad here is a CSS guru. Is this the best way to do a red circle? Probably not. Probably not. Right? We're going to do this with CSS properly. But it is still pretty cool. And then let's just keep going. I'll just show you just off the top things that I wrote. So here is an example of something that the Codex doesn't do. I wrote, make it bounce on the page. And in fact, you can see that it added a circle, that style, that animation, bounce, 1 second linear, infinite. But nobody defined the bounce animation yet in this code. So it invented something that does not work. And this is an example of sometimes machine gives you what you ask for, not what you want. So here's me trying again. I wrote, make it move. It essentially did the same exact code. And then I said, make it move with JavaScript. And it did the same code, but then it also did this code. And you can see, first of all, it's moving. Ta-da! But also you can see that there's a function called move, and it increments the speed of x and y, and then it calculates the top and the left x and y. Again, not the best way to animate. Elad is sweating right now because it's not the best way to animate. But still, it set timeout, and then it moves. And let me go back. I skipped the slide. And then it started move. And then I wrote, so let's see this animation go away from the screen. And I was like, hey, where's my ball? And so I wrote another thing that says, when the ball, I'll just let you see it, gets to the edge, make it go to another direction. Okay? So essentially like as a way of bounce. And now, quickly, I don't know why it started moving quicker, but now it bounced back. So you can see it generated the edge detection, right? So if window inner width minus 20. So it calculated the width of the ball, added it to the calculation, so not half of it is going to go forward. And here we have a bouncing animation that's written in 2 lines. Are you impressed yet? Not yet? Okay. So before I play this next recording, I have to be honest. This took me maybe about 25 tries to kind of record the right one, right? I wanted something succinct so you understand the impact, but also I wanted something that works. I'm not going to spend like 5-10 minutes figuring out the exact wordage of this. I knew this was possible because I did this once just playing around with it, and it still took me a few tries to get like the right wording. With that, I'm just going to show you this, and I'm just going to shut up. So I'm not going to shut up. I'm going to read the instructions. Add the date picker. And the next line is going to be an instruction. Every time I choose a date, get the price of Bitcoin on that date. That's all I said. So you can see that we got the date picker, right? So you see the code here on the right, date picker equals create element input, type date. And then we have this. And I want to show you this amazing thing that happened when I wrote get the price of Bitcoin. Because Codex was trained on a bunch of code and a bunch of other folks did this before, it got me the API to get the right price of Bitcoin. It understood that API receives a date as an input, and it connected an event listener on that date function that shoves that date into that API, and then it caught the onload function, and then it said, all right, so inside the kind of the result, there's data, and data has .bpi. I have no idea what BPI is, probably Bitcoin Price Index, and then it extracted the date, the price, and here you go. This is a working example of historical Bitcoin price calculator with 2 sentences. Right? 2 sentences, folks. When I saw this first, my mind exploded. Now, again, this specific example took me like 25 tries to record. Sometimes it got me a wrong API that didn't work. That happens a lot because it's trained on historical data. Sometimes it got me an API that didn't work because my Chrome extension blocked it. And here's, wait. Yeah, where's my head? Here. Magic. Here's important thing. When you do get access to the playground, there's 2 important things for you to know. There's 2 Chrome extensions that kind of let Codex out of the sandbox. One of them is disable content security policy, CSP. We all know this. It's annoying, and it's really helpful for protecting your identity online. So that's one extension. It disables CSP so Codex can actually hit other APIs. And you just saw it does this. It went to the API and got me the historical price of Bitcoin. And another one is allow course. So you can like hit APIs without that ask you to provide who you are. That's also some extension that can let you do some very, very cool things. Right, so here's another cool thing. Again, maybe my 20th attempt, but it's so cool. It's so cool. You know what? This is a recording, but in this case, I want to just try it. I have all the prompts that I added in this recording, and if it's not going to work, we'll go back to the recording. But now let me just try this for once, okay? So here we are. This is how the playground looks. Let me refresh this. You guys see my Chrome screen with the playground API? Somebody say yeah. Cool. Hopefully yes. And then I'll just paste all these instructions, and then I'll just show you. Add the title, said Fundbox loves frontend. Style it a bit, make it Arial. Add the table with name and RSVP status and picture columns. And then I said this, fetch a list of RSVPs from and this meetup's API for this meetup, and then populate the table. Let's see if this works. This may not work. Again, the results are not deterministic, even though I paste the same exact code or instructions. Sometimes things don't work. Let's see. Yes. All right, folks. So I hope you see yourself here. This is a list of RSVPs. This is everybody who came to this meetup. Your faces are here. And yep, I don't know if everybody who's RSVP, there's a lot. There are you. And there's everybody's here. And that's just insanely cool. What it did is, it did a bunch of stuff. So I gave it the URL, but it knew how to extract it. It also knew the results of this URL, and it knew that RSVPs.member.name is the name, and RSVPs.response is the response. And it did, if there's a photo, so this example failed for me a couple of times because not everybody has a photo in that array. And so just JavaScript just failed because we tried to access, member photo and it wasn't there. But in this case, it succeeded. It said, if there's a photo, create an element image and shove the RSVPs.member.photo, the thumb link into that image. Now, this is something that you don't know the API, you don't know how to do. You need to hit that API. Let me see if I can hit this, right? So let me go here. This is the result of this API. And now you need to see that like inside the thumbnails, there's a subsection. We all do this for APIs we don't know. And here Codex just took care of this. Which I think is crazy. So example worked. Let's skip forward. Right. let me do the same thing, but in a little different way. Okay, so switching back to my live example, I'm going to clean the slate, a new blank page, right? And now this is something that I just tried. I don't know what made me try it. Nobody told me that this works. I just did the same thing, just in Hebrew. So you guys can see that I said, those of you who read Hebrew, you can see that it's running right now. תוסיף טבלה עם העובדות משתתפת תמונת פרופיל. And in this case, I know the reason why it failed. I'll explain to you in a second. But essentially, it did the same thing. It understood my Hebrew, and it translated it to some language that it knows, and then it did the thing that I wanted. And the reason why this failed is because, again, not everybody has a photo. So Adi, I don't know if she's here, she has a photo, but the next person after her doesn't. And this JavaScript error shows that, we try to access a member that's not there. Let me see if I can show you the error. Yeah, you see, thumb link cannot read properties of undefined, because that person didn't have that thumb link. The previous example did an if. This example did not do an if. But essentially it worked as well. And you can see that let's make the picture round. Pixel. Oh, so this to me is insane. It also works in Russian. We have some Russian speaking folks as well. My way of writing Russian is weird, but like fotku 50 pixelей. Let's see if this works. So same. I just wrote a different language and I just told it what I want, and it literally says fotku 50 pixelей, like image 50 pixels. It doesn't say enlarge. It doesn't make it bigger. It just kind of understands the context, and to me that's kind of pretty insane. Now then go back to my keynote. I want to show you the Hebrew example as it works with the recording that I did. I always said that if the live example doesn't work, I will show you a recording. So here is it. תוסיף טבלה עם שם ותמונת פרופיל. It added the table, and then I said the following. Again, I knew the JavaScript API that I want to hit, so it was kind of a faking of a situation. I also allowed it to exit the playground. And then here I said, אם יש להם תמונה, תשים אותה. So if they have a picture, for non-Hebrew speaking folks, if they have a picture, put it. If don't have a picture, put something else. Again, will we write code exactly like this? Likely not. But here you see an example of everybody who RSVP'd to this meetup, and Codex brought it here. And I think I kept going here. I'm not sure. Yep. I just said, and then 50 pixels. And ta-da! So we built a quick AI. I haven't recorded this, I think, but I kept going with this example. And I wish I could, you know what, let me try to keep going with the other examples. We're in live code. Dima, can you check me on time? How much time I have left?
You actually don't really have.
Okay, let me finish then. Okay. So I will show you some other examples. I need 2 more minutes, okay? 2 more minutes. So I want to show you this because I shared a bunch of stuff, and some of you asked like, hey, how do I access it? Like, is it only for you? So I'm going to build you a page. I'm going to build all of us a page. There's a set of instructions. Let's hope this works. And you'll see this page getting built as we speak. I just pasted a set of instructions again that I prepared with a bunch of links that I wanted to share with you. I wanted the links to open in a new tab, so you see like a bunch of links generated, and then I say make them display block and make them look nice, add some highlight, colorize each link differently, and the last prompt that I said is make the links look nice. Now, if this looks nice or no, that's a definition that differs for everybody else, but look what I can do. I export to JS Fiddle, and I can, so Fundbox loves, whoop, no, I need hard frontend links, and I'll save it. Man, I checked this before I did this and it still logged me out. Let me just fiddle. Never mind. We're gonna do this again. I'll just copy this from here. There we go. We'll save this and we'll do show. And funny thing is, because it's JavaScript generated, it's gonna generate different colors every time. Let me drop this in chat and for everyone to see. So you can have access to all the links. There's a link to our hiring page as well here. So join us. And I just wanna finish on this, right? So I wanna leave you with this kind of thought experiment. So, well, I don't think that we're very close to being replaced completely because of that first part. Remember the part about figuring out the big problem and mapping that big problem into little problems? That's still far away, I think. I don't know if we're going to get there ever. Humans are problematic and their understanding of language is also problematic. I do think that a very short amount of time we'll all rely on AI to help us code. I think that some folks from GitHub can chime in here and see that like many folks who use Copilot, don't want to go back anymore. I have the same feeling about me, and I'm sure that once you guys get used to it, you will essentially become something like this, where Copilot is behind you and always helping. Whether it's training new developers in new languages, or by helping them understand code, or by taking away a lot of like the time spent on understanding packages, or thousands of different use cases that we haven't yet started, right? Codex was released in, I think, September or August this year, and Copilot was released like a month before. I know that Codex already has my back, and I know it's going to only continue. I want to leave you with this thought experiment. How does it feel to stand at the edge of human progress? This is a graph, not mine, it's from the website Wait.why. It shows us as we are right now in 2021, almost 2022, and millions of years of evolution, thousands or hundreds of thousands or years of evolution, nothing happened, and then we started being sentient, and then nothing happened for like thousands of years, and then we built a wheel, and then we got electricity, and then we invented the printing press, etc. So slow curve innovation, and then suddenly we invented the internet, and then 10 years ago AI came as a thing, right? So how does it feel? Does it feel like this, or maybe something like this? Because we don't have an intuition about the future, because we can't look forward into the future, we can't understand what the new innovation is going to hold for us. It doesn't feel overwhelming as though we're standing in front of a incremental exponential curve of progress. It feels something like this. So while what I've shown you today may feel like magical, it will be very